Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Here next to me is a 15-year-old brand new Homelite 2500 watt generator, and today we are going to start it up. But before we start it up, there's a few things that we got to do. Since it's been sitting for 15 years in my friend's basement, I'm not just going to go pull the cord and start this thing up. Even though it is brand new, there's some checks and some things I'm going to want to do to it. First, we're going to drain and change the oil out of it. We're going to see if there's anything in the fuel tank. If there's anything in the fuel tank, we're going to drain that out, clean it out, check out the air filter, check out the spark plug, make sure the carburetor's in good shape. All that before we start this thing up for the first time. So let's get to it. This is how you know it's new. Oh yeah. Nice to have the owner's manual. So this Homelite 2500 watt 5 horsepower generator is pretty much your kind of run-of-the-mill home generator. The reason why I don't want to just fire this thing up, because if it's been sitting for 15 years, just like an old car that's been sitting for 15 years, all the oil and everything has been just sitting down at the bottom. It's lost a lot of its viscosity in over that time, and if there's any fuel in the tank, which I don't think there is. No, there is some wetness down there, so we're probably going to pull that off and clean it out. Same with the air cleaner. I don't suspect to see too much on the spark plug since this hasn't been started up, but we're going to pull it out anyway, take a look at it, and then while the spark plug's out, after I've refilled the oil, I'll pull the cord a few times real slowly, and just because we want to get some of that oil splashing up on the cylinders, because we could potentially do a little bit of damage to this thing if we just go and fire it up without doing any of these checks to it, because we don't want to run any of the bad varnished fuel that's in here. We don't want that oil that's lost a lot of viscosity running through it, so we're going to get that all cleaned out and changed out before we do anything. Alright, well, so what's nice about having the owner's manual here, it tells you what oil to use as well. Now this thing is using 4-cycle engine oil, SAE 30. Don't get this confused with 10W30, 5W30 or anything like that. This SAE 30, this is made for small engines, lawnmowers, generators, and such. The Briggs & Stratton engine on here recommends their Briggs & Stratton engine oil, but that's not exactly necessary. So got the drain plug out of it, the oil is draining, and once that's done draining, we'll go ahead and fill it up through your fill cap here. There should be one, usually there's one of these on each side, but it'll measure the same on either side, so it doesn't matter which one you fill it through. And you're going to fill this up till where it's level with the fill hole. Okay, oil's been changed on. Now we're going to go ahead and pull this air cleaner off of here. So far so good. Air cleaner does look pretty darn new, so we're going to save on that. Alright, in order to get this fuel tank actually off of here, we actually have to pull apart a lot of things. So this top plate where the air cleaner sits has got to come off. We're going to have to unbolt the carburetor, some linkages and stuff like that. So, but it's pretty necessary to get this tank cleaned all the way, because we don't want anything in it going through the carburetor, because that'll cause us headaches in the long run. So it's worth it to take the extra time to do it now. You're going to choke your off-on switch, all the various linkages. So we're going to take this little Torx bit, we're going to take these screws out of here. Never done this before, sometimes it's a good idea to take a picture. That way you know how it all goes back together if this is something you're not familiar with. Many of you might recognize this setup. This is used a lot on like most Briggs & Stratton, like rototillers and stuff like that, have the same sort of carburetor setup. So this is pretty familiar territory maybe for a lot of you. Alright, after you've gotten all the screws off the top of the carburetor, there's a screw down here underneath the fuel tank. You're going to zip that off. And this thing is about free at this point. Okay, there is a spring in the back behind the plate here. You just take yourself a pair of needle nose, and this tank drops right out like so. When you're doing that, you're going to take a good look at the gasket over here. Make sure your gasket isn't damaged. If you're doing this, I have a lot of spare parts from all the engines I've done, but if you're doing this without a gasket kit, you want to be very leery of removing this out and damaging this gasket, because then you have to order a whole new kit for this thing. But I've got a lot of extra parts, so I can get away with this. I probably should have mentioned that from the beginning, but here we are. But anyway, fuel tank's out of here now, so what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to turn this thing upside down over the drain can that I already have sitting out here, and let's see if anything comes out of it. Pretty darn dry. That tells me that either it's all been evaporated. I do see some crud in there. Let me see if I can get a light shined on it. There is some crud down in there, so I'm going to spray some cleaner. You can just tell that it's been sitting for a really long time. That stuff's turned into varnish, so I want to clean all that stuff out. So when cleaning out old fuel tanks, one of the things I like to do, if it's not horrible, is just take some regular gasoline and just pour it in there. A little bit like that, enough to slosh it around, and you take that clean fuel. You're just going to slosh it around. Maybe put the cap back on it a little bit. And just, you know, like you're shaking a bottle. What that's going to do is just going to get all that dust and the particles and the varnish, because, you know, fuel is a solvent. So do that a few times, and then once you've done that enough, then you can go ahead. Let me see if I can get it to where you guys can see here. You're probably not going to see a lot of it. And just pour it all back out. If it's really bad, you can do that a few times, and every time you do, just take a look inside and see what it's looking like. But that's already 100% better, so I'm comfortable with that. I think I'm ready to mount this back up. Okay, before I mount this back up, I'm going to take a look at the carburetor here. I'm just going to take an air gun and just kind of blow up, get whatever dust particles are in there, blow it out. Okay, a little tip here: when you're remounting stuff like this that has multiple fasteners, kind of put them on there all hand tight before you tighten them all down, because if you tighten one down and the holes don't line up and somewhere else, and you got to loosen that back up again. So I always like to kind of loosely put things in, let them thread a little bit, and then go back through and tighten them all down. Don't forget to get that spring that's behind here that you took off earlier to get the fuel tank out. And then once that's on, you're going to put your linkage back on. Refer to your picture that you took if you took a picture. And once your linkages are back on, throw the last of your screws in. Test functionality of everything before you bolt everything back on. Okay, once you've got all your linkage back on, you've tested functionality, then you can go ahead and put your filter cover back on, fasten that down, then you put your filter and your cover back on. After that, we'll get the spark plug pulled out of there and see what that looks like. Okay, I expect this to be pretty clean. Oh, it's a little darker than I expected, but they do claim that they run this on, the engine has been tested with fuel treated stable, so it's been run at the factory before it was sent out. So but it's not terrible. It's good to go, I think. So I'm just gonna brush this off with the wire brush and stick it back in the engine. Okay, we've done about all the checks that I'm gonna do to this thing so far. What I want to do now is I want to pull this handle a few times without letting this thing start up. So what I've done is I pulled the spark plug cap off the spark plug, so that way it doesn't fire. And what we're doing is we're just cranking the engine over, trying to get some oil movement inside there to get to all the places that haven't gotten oil in a while. So all you do is pull the cap off here and just kind of do this. Alright, got the spark plug wire back on here. What do you guys think? 1 pull, 2 pulls, 15 pulls? How many is it going to take? First fire up new generator in over 15 years. Let's see what happens. Make sure you got the choke on. It's switches on. Here we go. Hell yeah. Alright, so it took more than 2 or 3 pulls, but it started up, ran great. Played with the choke a little bit, eventually it just ran perfect. I plugged in, as you guys saw, I plugged in my little grinder thing and checked both the outlets in the back. It's creating electricity, seems to be working really well. So yeah, that's gonna do it today, guys. Thanks for sticking around and watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. If you like what I do on this channel, please consider subscribing and hit that like button for me. Alright, take care.